The royal palace of planet Arden looked perfect from the outside. Its silver walls shined under 3 suns. Tall towers reached the clouds and soldiers guarded every corner. Inside, everything sparkled except for one sound that never stopped. Crying. The twin daughters of the alien queen cried day and night. Their voices echoed through the golden halls like broken music. Every servant, every guard, and even the queen herself felt helpless. The girls were only 5 years old, yet no one could calm them. 15 nannies had tried. 15 had failed. Some ran away in tears, others begged the queen to release them. One even fainted after a single night. The queen had fired them all, her patience burning like fire. How hard can it be to handle 2 children? She shouted in her throne room one evening, her voice shaking the glass windows. Her advisors bowed low, afraid to speak. The queen's silver crown reflected her anger. Outside the throne room, a man swept the floor quietly. He was human, one of the few allowed to work in the palace. His name was Daniel. He was a single father from Earth, working as a janitor to support his daughter who lived in the lower city. He had no rank, no power, no importance, but his eyes were calm and kind. Daniel often heard the cries echo through the halls as he worked. Every night he passed the royal nursery and saw flashes of chaos through the half-open door. Alien toys thrown across the floor, glowing books scattered, and 2 small figures sobbing under silk blankets. He never said a word. He just swept the floors and whispered softly to himself, "Poor little ones." One night, as he cleaned near the queen's chambers, he saw a nanny running out, her uniform torn and her eyes red from crying. Guards followed her, shouting for order. The queen's angry voice thundered behind them, "Enough! I want no more failures. Bring me silence." The door slammed shut. Daniel froze. For a moment, the palace went quiet. Then the crying began again, louder than before. He sighed, putting his mop aside. He knew that sound. It wasn't just noise. It was the same kind of cry his daughter used to make when she missed her mother. The same sound of loneliness, not misbehavior. As Daniel turned to leave, he noticed a small shadow in the hallway. One of the princesses, tiny, pale blue skin, glowing eyes full of tears, was standing near the corner, clutching a broken toy. She looked at him silently. Daniel froze. He wasn't allowed to speak to royalty, but seeing her trembling hands, he slowly bent down to her level. "You okay, little one?" he asked softly. His voice was gentle, like the breeze after a storm. The princess blinked, surprised. No one ever spoke to her that way. She didn't answer, but her sobs grew quieter. Daniel smiled and picked up the broken toy from the floor. It was a small glowing bird with wings of crystal. He looked at it, then pulled a small repair tool from his pocket, something he always carried for his cleaning equipment. In a few careful moves, he fixed the wing and handed it back to her. The toy lit up again, fluttering its glass wings. The little princess gasped. Her tears stopped. She smiled, a small, shy smile that no one in the palace had seen for weeks. Daniel whispered, "There you go. Nothing's ever too broken to fix, right?" Before the princess could say anything, the queen's voice echoed from behind. "Who are you talking to?" Daniel quickly stood and bowed low. "Forgive me, Your Majesty," he said quietly. "I found her outside the nursery." The queen's glowing eyes narrowed. "You are the janitor, yes?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Then stay in your place," she said coldly. "Do not interfere again." Daniel bowed deeper. "Yes, Your Majesty." But before he turned away, the princess whispered something that froze the queen in place. "Mama." "He fixed my bird." The queen looked at the toy in her daughter's hand. The crystal wings sparkled beautifully. For the first time in months, her child wasn't crying. She was smiling. The queen's expression softened for a second, then she turned sharply away. "Take her back to the nursery," she ordered the guards. Daniel quietly picked up his mop again and walked down the hall. But deep inside, something changed. He couldn't stop thinking about those little girls, their sad eyes, their lonely cries. He had fixed a toy tonight. But maybe, just maybe, he could fix something far more broken. That night, while the palace slept, Daniel stood by the window of his small room, looking out at the glowing city below. He thought of his own daughter on Earth, then of the twin princesses who had smiled for the first time. He made a quiet promise to himself. "If I ever get the chance," he whispered, "I'll help them smile again." And somewhere, deep inside the silent palace, the alien queen stood in her room, holding the small glowing bird her daughter had shown her. For the first time, she wondered if a human janitor might truly be different from all the others. The next morning, everything in the palace would begin to change. The next morning, the royal palace was quieter but not peaceful. The alien queen sat at her crystal breakfast table, her golden eyes heavy with exhaustion. The sound of laughter from her daughters last night had surprised her, but she told herself it was only a coincidence. After all, what could a simple human janitor possibly know about royal children? Still, the image of the human fixing that small glowing bird replayed in her mind again and again. The way her daughter smiled at him, the calm in his voice. It was different. Too different. She shook her head and stood up. "Guards," she said coldly, "bring me the royal tutors. We begin lessons again." The twin princesses were brought in, silent, tired, and frowning. The new tutor, an alien scholar with 5 eyes and a voice like thunder, bowed before the queen and began his teaching session. Within minutes, one of the twins started crying again. The other covered her ears. The queen's patience snapped. "Enough!" she shouted. The tutor bowed and ran out, trembling. The hall went silent except for the soft sobs of her daughters. From the far end of the hall, Daniel stood with his mop. He had heard everything. He looked at the crying princesses and then at the queen's tired face. His heart tightened. He didn't know what pushed him, but he suddenly put down his mop and stepped forward. "Your Majesty," he said softly. The guards instantly blocked his path. "Silence, human. You're not allowed to speak to the queen." But the queen raised her hand. "Let him speak," she said, her tone sharp but curious. Daniel took a deep breath. "Your daughters aren't bad, Your Majesty," he said. "They're lonely. They don't need another teacher. They need someone to listen." The entire hall froze. A servant gasped. A guard tightened his grip on his weapon. No one had ever spoken to the queen like that, not even her council. Her golden eyes narrowed. "You dare tell me how to raise my children?" she hissed. Daniel bowed slightly. "No, Your Majesty. I only mean, I've seen that kind of sadness before. My daughter cried the same way when she lost her mother. Sometimes children don't need lessons. They need love." The queen's voice rose like thunder. "Enough! You are a janitor, not a royal advisor." But before she could command the guards to remove him, one of the little princesses tugged on her gown and whispered, "Mama." "He helped me." The queen looked down. The girl's tiny blue fingers held the glowing toy bird again, the same one Daniel had fixed. Her other daughter nodded silently, her small voice shaking. He didn't yell. He just listened. The queen's eyes softened for a moment, but she quickly hid it behind her pride. "And you think this human can teach better than the finest minds of my empire?" she asked coldly. Daniel didn't look away. His voice was calm. "I'm not a teacher, Your Majesty. I'm a father. Let me try once. If I fail, I'll leave forever." The room went dead silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. The queen turned to her head guard. "You find this amusing?" she asked. The guard shook his head quickly. "No, Majesty." Her gaze returned to Daniel. "Very well," she said finally. "You want to prove yourself, human? You will take care of my daughters for 1 hour. If they cry, you will be removed from the palace immediately." Daniel nodded once. "That's fair." The guard stepped aside. The princesses looked at him curiously, their eyes shining like twin moons. Daniel knelt to their level and smiled gently. "Hey there," he said softly. "How about we go outside for a bit?" The queen raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She followed from a distance as Daniel led the twins toward the garden. The royal garden was filled with glowing plants, tall crystal trees, and floating butterflies of light. But the princesses had never been allowed to play there freely. They always had someone watching, someone correcting, someone shouting. Daniel walked slowly, picking up a fallen flower from the glowing grass. He handed it to one of the girls. "On my planet," he said, "this flower means courage." The little princess blinked. "Courage?" she repeated softly. "Yes," Daniel said with a warm smile. "It means even small things can survive storms." The other twin picked one too and placed it on her sister's hair. They both giggled quietly. The queen, watching from behind the crystal wall, covered her mouth in surprise. Then Daniel picked up his mop bucket and placed it upside down like a tiny drum. He started tapping a rhythm. "Where I come from, my daughter and I used to make music from anything," he said. "You want to try?" The twins' eyes lit up. They picked up sticks and joined in, beating softly on the bucket. Soon the garden was filled with laughter, and after the hour ended, the queen stepped out. Her daughters ran to her, excited, showing her the glowing flowers and singing the short tune Daniel had taught them. "Look, Mama, we made music," one said proudly. The queen looked at Daniel. Her expression was unreadable. "You kept them quiet," she said. Daniel shook his head with a small smile. "No, Your Majesty. I didn't make them quiet. I made them happy." Her golden eyes softened again for a heartbeat. Then she turned away. "Continue your cleaning, human." As Daniel bowed and walked back to the palace halls, he heard one of the princesses whisper to her sister, "I like him. He's different." And far above, from the tallest tower, the queen stood by the window and watched him leave. For the first time in many years, she wondered if perhaps her empire's greatest lesson could come from the one person everyone overlooked, the human janitor who dared to speak. That night, as the suns of Arden set, the palace didn't echo with cries. It echoed with laughter. And somewhere deep inside the queen's heart, a small crack began to form, letting the first light of change slip through. Morning sunlight spilled into the royal nursery, soft and golden. The alien queen sat beside her daughters' large crystal beds, silently watching them eat breakfast. For the first time in months, they were calm. No shouting, no crying, no broken dishes flying across the room. The same children who had driven out 15 nannies now sat quietly, giggling at something small in their hands, a simple wooden spinning top. Daniel, the human janitor, had carved it himself the night before. He had stayed up late, shaping the toy with a small knife from his cleaning kit. It wasn't fancy, not glowing or high-tech like alien toys, but it was made with patience. That patience had something the royal palace had forgotten: heart. The queen pretended not to watch, but her sharp eyes kept glancing toward her daughters. The sound of their soft laughter was strange to her, almost unreal. She turned her face away before anyone noticed the faint smile threatening to form on her lips. Daniel stood by the doorway, mop in hand, pretending to clean the shining floor. The princesses were whispering to each other, arguing who would spin the top next. Their small, high voices filled the room like music. "Can we keep it?" one of them asked suddenly, looking at Daniel. He stopped mid-sweep, then smiled gently. "It's yours," he said. "On Earth, when we give something to someone, it means we trust them to take care of it." The little alien girls blinked, their bright eyes full of curiosity. "Trust?" they repeated softly, tasting the strange human word. "Yes," Daniel said, kneeling down beside them. "It means I believe you'll be kind to it, that you'll take care of something small and not let it break." The older twin looked at the toy in her hand. Her glowing fingers traced the small carvings on the top, tiny stars carved one by one. Then she whispered, "We will not break it." Daniel nodded. "I know." From the other side of the room, two guards exchanged confused glances. They had watched nannies, teachers, even soldiers fail with these girls. Yet this human, this janitor, had them listening like they were learning something sacred. One of the guards leaned close to the other and whispered, "He doesn't use orders. He uses warmth." The queen, hearing that, didn't react, but deep inside she agreed. Later that day, she summoned her daughters to the garden for their usual lesson. The alien tutor stood waiting, a tall figure with silver horns and glowing armor. But before the class began, the twins refused to leave Daniel's side. "We want Daniel to come too," they said together, holding his hands. The tutor frowned. "Your Majesty," he said, "the human may contaminate their education. He should stay out of royal learning." The queen hesitated. Everyone's eyes turned to her. She should have refused. She should have reminded them of order, discipline, hierarchy. But then she saw the small spinning top in their hands, the first gift that had made them smile in months. "Let him come," she said quietly. The tutor bowed stiffly, clearly offended. Daniel followed behind, feeling awkward but grateful. He knew this was dangerous ground, one mistake, and he'd be gone from the palace forever. The lesson began, filled with strange alien symbols and equations. The twins tried, but their attention faded fast. Their eyes drifted toward the birds outside, the soft wind moving through glowing trees. Daniel watched, then said gently, "Your Majesty, may I show them something?" The queen raised a brow. "Show them what?" Daniel picked up a stick from the garden floor and drew a small circle in the sand. Then he drew another circle inside it and another. "This is how we teach shapes to our children on Earth," he said. "Not on screens, but with our hands." The twins immediately leaned forward, curious. "Can we try?" He nodded, handing them each a stick. They began drawing lines and circles, laughing when the shapes went crooked. Their alien tutor looked disgusted. "This is nonsense," he hissed. "They are royal heirs, not artists." But the queen silenced him with one wave of her hand. She was watching her daughters' faces, open, free, bright. She couldn't remember the last time she had seen them like that. As the lesson ended, the twins ran to her, their fingers covered in golden sand. "Mama, look. We made stars," they said proudly. The queen stared at the messy lines in the dirt and felt her heart twist. The stars looked nothing like real constellations, yet they were beautiful in their own innocent way. She looked at Daniel. "What did you do to them?" she asked softly. Daniel bowed. "Nothing, Your Majesty. I just let them be children." Her gaze lingered on him for a long moment before she turned away. "You may go," she said, but her voice lacked the cold edge it once had. That evening, when the suns dipped below the palace towers, the queen visited her daughter's room quietly. She found them asleep, holding the small wooden spinning top between their hands. The toy glowed faintly under the moonlight, reflecting their peaceful faces. For a long time she just stood there watching. In the silence, her thoughts raced. How had a mere human done what no one else could? How had he reached the hearts of her children so easily? She walked to the window and looked out over the glowing city below. Somewhere out there, Daniel was probably cleaning the lower halls, humming softly as he always did. The queen whispered to herself, "Humans, perhaps they are not as weak as I believed." Outside the nursery, two guards quietly listened. One murmured to the other, "The queen is changing." The other nodded. Or maybe, the human is teaching her too. Down below, Daniel finished his shift and stood in the quiet corridor. He smiled faintly, remembering the princess's laughter. "First smiles," he whispered. "That's how it starts." Little did he know that those first smiles would soon shake the entire royal court and force the queen to make a choice that would change the future of her empire forever. The palace of Arden had changed. The air no longer echoed with the endless crying of royal children. Instead, soft laughter and small footsteps filled the golden halls. The alien maid smiled again. The guards relaxed. For the first time in years, the palace felt alive, but not everyone was happy about it. The royal council, the queen's advisors, whispered in dark corners. They were tall aliens with long faces and eyes like glass, always talking in low, angry tones. "This cannot continue," one hissed. "The queen allows a human janitor to play with royal blood." "It is shameful," another replied. "He makes her daughters laugh. The court thinks he has some kind of magic." "A janitor," the first spat. "A lower species. What will the galaxy think?" They planned to remove him quietly before the queen's affection grew stronger. Meanwhile, Daniel had no idea that danger was brewing. He continued his work every morning, mopping marble floors, fixing small machines, and then spending time with the princesses. To them, he wasn't just a janitor anymore. He was Mr. Daniel, their teacher, storyteller, and friend. He told them Earth stories, of rain that smelled like new life, of oceans that touched the sky, and of fathers who stayed up all night to chase away nightmares. The twins listened with wide eyes, their hearts opening to a world far beyond their glowing empire. One day, Daniel brought someone new to the palace, a small girl with brown hair and bright eyes. "This is my daughter, Emily," he said softly. "She's a bit shy." The queen's guards were shocked. A human child inside the royal grounds? But before anyone could protest, the twin princesses ran forward, curious and smiling. Within minutes, the three girls were laughing, playing with flowers and teaching each other words in their own languages. From a distance, the queen stood watching, her golden eyes unreadable. She saw her daughters smiling more than ever before, but she also felt something strange, a sting of jealousy. Daniel had done what she could not. He had built a bond with her children that she never managed to form herself. That night, she sat in her chamber alone. Her reflection in the silver mirror looked tired, older. She whispered to herself, "What kind of mother needs a stranger to raise her children?" But in her heart, she knew the truth. Daniel's kindness wasn't weakness, it was strength. Still, her pride as a queen fought against her heart as a mother. The next morning, rumors began spreading through the court. Servants whispered that the queen was falling under human influence. Some claimed she was losing control. Others said the janitor was a spy from another world. When Daniel entered the hall, he felt the cold stares from everyone. The same guards who once nodded politely now looked away. The air felt heavier. Something was wrong. During the princess's lesson that day, one of the royal advisors entered uninvited. His tall frame blocked the light as he bowed before the queen. "Your Majesty," he said, "I must speak about the human problem." The queen's tone was sharp. "Say it. The janitor grows too close to your children. He brings his human offspring here. This is unacceptable. The council demands his removal." The queen stayed silent. Daniel stood behind her, holding a small book he had been reading to the girls. He lowered his eyes, waiting. The advisor continued, "It is dangerous to allow a lower species to influence royal heirs. The people talk, Majesty. They call it weakness." The queen looked at her daughters. They were standing near Daniel, holding his hands tightly. Their glowing eyes were full of fear. She finally spoke, her voice cold and commanding. "Leave us." The advisor bowed and stormed out, his expression furious. When the door closed, the queen turned to Daniel. "They are right about one thing," she said quietly. "You are human. You are not one of us. If the council acts against me, I cannot protect you." Daniel nodded. "I understand, Your Majesty." He turned to go, but one of the little princesses ran forward and hugged his leg tightly. "No, don't go! We want our stories." The queen looked at them, her daughters clinging to a man who wasn't even from their world, and her heart cracked again. "Enough," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. But Daniel smiled gently, kneeling to meet the twins' eyes. "I'll never leave if you need me," he said softly. "I promise to help you smile. A promise is something we humans never break." The queen's breath caught. Those words, so simple, so sincere, echoed in her chest long after he left the room. That evening the council gathered in secret once more. "The queen hesitates," one said. "She grows weak." Another replied, "Then we must act without her." In the shadows of the palace, plans were made. Lies would be spread. Proofs would be forged. And before long, the kind human janitor would be accused of something terrible. But far above, on the royal balcony, the queen stood under the alien stars, watching the garden below where Daniel's laughter mixed with her daughter's. Her golden eyes softened. The queen whispered to the wind, "Let them talk. Let them hate. They do not understand what I see." And in that moment, she realized something powerful. Change always begins with whispers. Soon, those whispers would grow into storms that would test her crown, her heart, and the fragile peace she had found through one simple human father. The night sky over Arden was dark purple, streaked with silver lightning. Heavy clouds rolled above the palace towers like angry waves. Inside, the halls were silent, too silent, the kind of silence that hides danger. The alien queen stood alone on her balcony, the wind tearing through her silver robes. Her thoughts were heavy. She had just returned from a meeting with the royal council, and their words still echoed in her mind. "Your Majesty," one had said, "the human is poisoning your children's minds." "He teaches them earth words," said another. "He teaches rebellion." "If you do not remove him," hissed the oldest, "the empire will see you as weak." Weak. The word cut deep. For years, the queen had ruled with strength and fear. No one dared question her. But now, a janitor, a human father, was shaking her rule with nothing but kindness. She looked down at the garden below, where Daniel's small light still flickered. He was repairing the water fountain as he often did at night. He worked quietly, humming a song from his home world. The sound drifted up to her balcony, soft and peaceful. Too peaceful for a palace at war with itself. The queen closed her eyes. "Why does he make everything feel different?" she whispered. Just then thunder rolled. A guard ran into her chamber, panting. "Your Majesty, there's been an incident." "What kind of incident?" "Someone reported the human entering the royal library after hours. A restricted area." Her eyes turned cold. "The library?" "Yes, Majesty." "The council believes he was trying to access the archives of royal bloodlines." Her heart froze. "That's impossible," she said. "He would never—" But she stopped. Doubt, small and poisonous, crawled into her chest. "Bring him to me," she ordered. Minutes later, rain began to fall over the glowing palace. Daniel stood in the grand hall dripping wet, surrounded by guards. His hands were tied. The queen entered slowly, her long cape dragging behind her like shadow. "Daniel," she said quietly, "why were you in the royal library?" He looked up confused. "Library? I wasn't, your majesty. I was fixing the leaking pipes under the hall." "The rain. Enough," snapped one of the councilmen, stepping forward. "We found his fingerprints on the archive door." Daniel shook his head. "That's because the pipe goes through that wall. I was just patching it." The queen stared into his eyes, searching for a lie. She saw only honesty, the same calm she saw when he comforted her daughters. But the council's whispers filled the room like smoke. "He lies, Majesty. Humans are known for trickery. He's been filling the princesses' heads with earth nonsense. Even now his child plays among royal blood as if she were one of them." The queen's hands trembled. She wanted to believe Daniel, but the pressure was crushing. The entire empire watched her now. One wrong move and her rule would fall apart. "Take him to the lower chambers," she said finally. The guards dragged Daniel away. The princesses screamed from behind the door. "No, don't hurt him!" The queen stood frozen, unable to look at them. When the doors shut, the sound of thunder drowned everything else. Midnight came. The storm outside grew wild. Lightning flashed across the sky, lighting up the queen's face as she sat in her empty throne room. The toy bird her daughter loved still rested on the table beside her. She picked it up and pressed the tiny switch. It glowed faintly the same way it had when Daniel repaired it. Her chest ached. The sound of his words returned to her mind. "Children don't need orders, your majesty. They need love." She stood abruptly and walked to the window. Far below, in the rain-soaked courtyard, she saw Daniel kneeling, still tied, still silent, while guards waited for her final order. She turned to her reflection in the glass. "If I punish him," she whispered, "I protect my crown but lose my children." She looked back at Daniel. "If I free him, I lose my throne but keep their smiles." Thunder cracked. She made her choice. When the guards moved forward to escort Daniel to the cell, the queen's voice echoed through the hall. "Stop!" Everyone froze. She descended the stairs slowly, her eyes fixed on the human in the rain. "Untie him," she ordered. The guards hesitated. "Majesty, the council, I said untie him!" Her voice boomed through the storm, the ropes fell away. Daniel looked up at her, confused and shivering. "I should have trusted you," the queen said softly. "I listened to fear instead of truth." Daniel bowed slightly. "You listened to your duty, your majesty. That's what rulers do." The queen shook her head. "No, that's what rulers think they must do. But mothers must listen to their hearts." The lightning lit her face again, and for the first time in years, tears fell from her golden eyes. When dawn came, the storm was gone. The queen sat with Daniel and her daughters in the royal garden. The twins clung to him, laughing again as the first rays of sun touched their faces. The council watched from the distance, furious but silent. None dared speak after what they had seen, their queen standing in the storm beside a human, defending him with her crown on the line. The palace, once ruled by fear, was changing. And deep within its glowing walls, something greater than power had been born. Trust. That night would forever be remembered in the empire's history as the storm at midnight, the moment when a human, janitor's courage and a mother's love rewrote destiny. Morning came soft and golden after the storm. The sky over Arden looked freshly washed and the palace shimmered as if reborn. Every servant walked quieter that day. Something had changed during the night, something deep. The story of how the alien queen walked into the rain to defend a human had already begun spreading through the palace like fire. Daniel, however, didn't know that his act had become legend. He simply stood in the garden, helping the twin princesses feed the glowing birds that fluttered between the trees. His hands still trembled slightly from the cold, but his eyes were calm. The queen watched from her balcony. For the first time, she didn't see a servant. She saw a father, patient, kind, and endlessly strong. A being who understood love more than her entire royal court. When Daniel looked up and met her gaze, he smiled. Not out of pride or victory, but warmth, the kind of smile that made the queen's heart ache. Later that morning, she summoned him to her private chamber. No guards, no council, no witnesses, just them, Daniel entered quietly, bowing. "Your Majesty." She gestured toward the chair. "Sit." He hesitated, unsure if it was a test, but her eyes softened. "Please," she added. When he sat, the Queen looked at him for a long moment. "I once believed humans were weak," she said. "Emotional, fragile, but last night, you stood against fear, against lies, and you did not break." Daniel lowered his eyes. "I only did what any parent would, Your Majesty." She tilted her head. The room went quiet. The Queen's breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not even her generals. But there was no disrespect in his voice, only truth. That evening, Daniel was invited to join the royal dinner, an event never meant for a human. The council protested, but the Queen silenced them with a single look. The long silver table was filled with food from every world under her rule, glowing fruits, floating drinks, and dishes that shimmered like stars. The twin princesses sat on either side of Daniel, laughing and talking in both languages, alien and human. They even taught their mother a few Earth words. When one of the girls spilled her drink, the Queen flinched instinctively, ready to scold. But Daniel gently took the girl's hand and said, "It's okay, little one. Mistakes teach us how to be careful." The Queen watched, her expression softening again. For her, mistakes were punishable, not forgivable. But in Daniel's world, mistakes were lessons. She leaned back, silent, thoughtful. After dinner, the Queen called the council for an emergency session. They gathered in the great chamber, muttering angrily. "Majesty, you cannot let this human influence your family," one said. "It is dangerous," another added. The people are watching. You will lose their respect." The Queen stood tall, her crown shining under the violet light. "Respect built on fear is not real," she said calmly. "This human has taught my daughters more in weeks than all of you have in years." The council gasped. "He teaches them humility," she continued. "He teaches them courage and compassion, lessons even I had forgotten." One advisor stepped forward, furious. "And you will let this janitor rewrite the laws of the Empire?" The Queen's voice was steady. "Perhaps that's exactly what the Empire needs." A heavy silence fell. The advisors looked at each other but dared not speak. They could see it now. The Queen's authority was not weakened by the human. It was strengthened. That night, the Queen went to the royal nursery alone. She found her daughters asleep, one clutching the wooden spinning top Daniel had made, the other holding a small flower he'd given her. Daniel's words echoed in her mind. Children don't need orders. They need love. For the first time in her life, the Queen knelt beside their bed, brushed their hair gently and whispered, "Sleep well, my stars." The next morning, the princesses woke up to a surprise on their mother sitting at the breakfast table, smiling softly. "Mama?" one asked timidly. "You're eating with us?" The Queen nodded. "Today we eat together, as family." The girls giggled, and Daniel, standing nearby, couldn't help but smile. Days turned into weeks. The Queen began visiting Daniel during lessons, quietly watching as he taught her daughters Earth songs and simple stories. Once she even joined in, awkwardly trying to sing. The sound of her laughter startled the entire palace. Word spread beyond the city. The cold-hearted Queen of Arden had changed. She was still powerful, still feared, but there was something new in her, something human. One evening, as the suns dipped below the horizon, Daniel stood in the garden watching the sky. The Queen approached silently. "You've done what no royal advisor could," she said. "You've made my daughters happy." Daniel smiled faintly. "They made themselves happy, Your Majesty. I just reminded them how." She looked up at the stars. "You've also changed me, Daniel. For the first time I understand what power truly means." "What does it mean?" he asked. She turned toward him, her golden eyes soft. "Power means nothing if it cannot protect love." For a moment, they stood in silence, a queen and a janitor, two souls from different worlds, united by the same truth. And though the Empire didn't know it yet, that quiet moment in the garden, that simple lesson from a human father, would become the seed of a revolution that would shake the stars. The twin suns of Arden rose over the palace, painting its silver towers in gold. The Empire had begun to whisper. Across the planets under the Queen's rule, the same question echoed. Who was the human that made the royal children laugh? Stories spread faster than light. Some said he used forbidden earth magic. Others said the queen had fallen under his spell. But those who had seen him up close, the guards, the maids, the gardeners, they told a simpler truth. He is just a father, they said. A man who knows love better than anyone. Inside the royal nursery, Daniel sat with the princesses, reading from an old Earth storybook he'd copied by hand. The girls leaned against him, listening closely, their eyes bright with wonder. Every page turned was another spark of change in the heart of the empire. The queen entered quietly, her robes flowing behind her like moonlight. She didn't interrupt. She just listened as Daniel read a line that struck deep into her soul. The smallest kindness can melt the coldest heart. When the story ended, the twins clapped. The queen smiled faintly and said, "Daniel, come with me. There's something you must see." They walked through the grand halls, but something felt different. Hundreds of people had gathered, nobles, soldiers, servants, even children. The queen stopped in the center of the throne room where her council waited, their faces pale and tight. "Your Majesty," one of them began nervously. "Why summon the entire court?" The queen raised her hand. "Because today the empire changes." The hall went silent. She turned to Daniel. "You came here as a janitor, a servant no one respected. But you have done what all my advisors could not. You healed my daughters. You reminded me of what I once forgot. That strength is not coldness and love is not weakness." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The queen stepped forward, her crown catching the light. "I built this empire on fear," she said. "But fear cannot raise children nor build peace. This man, this human, showed me a better way." Daniel looked down humbly. "Your Majesty, I'm no teacher. You are," she interrupted softly. "You are a teacher, a father, and a living example of what it means to be truly strong." The queen turned to the guards. "From this day forth, Daniel of Earth shall no longer serve as janitor. He will be appointed as royal guardian and educator of the heirs." Gasps filled the hall. The twin princesses standing near the throne squealed with joy. "Papa Daniel!" they shouted, running to hug his legs. The queen smiled, not as a ruler but as a mother. But the council was furious. One of them stepped forward. "Majesty, this is madness. He is human. What will the other worlds think when they see a lower being raised above us?" The queen's voice was calm but sharp as lightning. "They will think the truth, that a single human has done more for this empire than any of you." The advisor opened his mouth to argue again, but the queen's next words silenced him forever. "I am the Queen of Arden," she declared, "and if my empire cannot honor compassion, then it does not deserve to exist." The hall erupted, some in applause, some in shock, some in tears. Over the next weeks, the change spread beyond the palace. The queen ordered new reforms, schools for both aliens and humans, shared workplaces, and cultural exchange between species. For the first time in history, humans walked freely through the capital without fear. The royal daughters grew stronger and wiser,